8 a.m., 21st November, 1916. "12 minutes before disaster. Staircase. Up the stairs. We're on C deck, I think. Or maybe B deck. At the end of these quarters, they go. Additional elevator. This is C deck. B deck. Now you're on A deck. Britannic. Final day at sea. Off in the last boat. Once the time comes. Motor launches. The forward staff is over there on both sides. Apparently, war had broken out. So on the aft staff. Ship's bridge. And this we're actually swung to full steam ahead around this time, and we can see the island of Kia to our east, the rest of Greece to our west, an open ocean on bow and stern, north and south. 8:05 a.m. 7 minutes to go. While the ship starts her final descent. A 55-minute trip to the bottom. 8:06 a.m. 1 minute before the big narrators arrive, along with survivor accounts from the disaster.
8:07 a.m., 21st of November, 1916. His Majesty's Hospital ship Britannic is sailing to the British sea base of Lemnos in the Aegean Sea, where she would take on board thousands of wounded soldiers from the Allied campaigns against Turkey in the First World War. She sails from Naples, Italy, on a scheduled round trip of 2 weeks from Southampton. Britannic is the third and final ship of the Olympic class, the youngest sister of the RMS Olympic and the infamous RMS Titanic.
Britannic was originally designed to be fairly similar to her sisters Olympic and Titanic. Increased competition amongst transatlantic liners and greater expectations from passengers led designers to make significant changes to her accommodations. This would set Britannic's design apart from her two older sisters. Third class was given new entrances. Second class would be given the luxury of their very own gymnasium. First class passengers would enjoy many new improvements. These included a larger a la carte restaurant, a new reception room and B deck, where the most elite passengers would dine in unparalleled style. A playroom where children could play instead of using one of the palm courts like on Olympic and Titanic. A ladies' hairdresser salon, in addition to the barber shop. New sitting rooms were added on C deck as a result of the parlour suites having proved so popular on Olympic and Titanic. Keeping up with the trends and expectations, first class would see the addition of many private bathrooms and washrooms for cabins. Although basic on Olympic and Titanic, the swimming pool in Britannic was to be completely redecorated to keep up with the trends of sumptuous swimming baths aboard the German liners. Even the already luxurious spaces such as the Grand Staircase were also improved. The boat and A-deck entrances were modified to accommodate a Welt pipe organ. Ultimately, this musical instrument was never installed, but it still survives today. The decorative wrought iron panels designed to conceal the pipes on the organ were eventually auctioned off in London after the war. Many of Britannic's luxurious fittings were never installed due to her conversion to hospital ship in 1915. These were sold off over 3 separate auctions in London and Belfast in 1919.
When the First World War broke out, construction of Britannic was placed on the back burner. Harland and Wolff, the builders, shifted their work toward the war effort. The Allied invasion of Gallipoli showed that the British Admiralty would need larger ships to transport their wounded home from the far-off battlefields of the Mediterranean. The Cunard ocean liners, Mauretania and Aquitania, were requisitioned as troop ships. This was also done with the White Star liner Olympic, the first sister of Britannic. Finally, the War Office decided to pay for the finalization of White Star's Britannic under the condition that it would be used as a hospital ship for the duration of the war. After the war ends, the ship would be scheduled to return to the hands of the White Star Line.
Over 3,300 bunks were installed on Britannic to accommodate patients. The ship was painted white, with a green band broken by red crosses, the internationally recognized designation for a hospital ship. Both sides of the war had hospital ships under these markings, and both sides of the war agreed to care for whatever wounded they could. Therefore, it was understood that neither side should attack a hospital ship of any nationality.
Prior to Britannic's voyage, the German submarine U-73 had laid 2 mine barriers in the Kea Channel, totaling approximately 12 mines. Now, mines are indiscriminate killers. The mine was not meant to target a hospital ship like Britannic, but rather it was laid where the Germans thought that they would interdict British naval traffic going into or out of Greek ports.
One minute before disaster.
My name is Corporal Jack Waugh, of the Royal Army Medical Corps. I had just finished breakfast and had come up on deck. I sat down on the hatchway while one of our chaplains, with his map out, was showing us different places of interest on the nearby shorelines.
When Britannic hit one of the contact fuses on the mine detonated.
8:12 a.m. Impact.
The resulting explosion created an expanding gas bubble, lifting Britannic's bow with it. It twisted Britannic's hull a bit, slightly warped her frame, which resulted in the watertight doors in boiler rooms 6 and 5 becoming jammed in their tracks in the full open position.
At breakfast, a muffled explosion rang out from the lower decks. The ship vibrated more than it shook. Vibrations passed us, smashing the furniture and
Oh,
windows, then echoed off
snap.
into the distance.
Taking water.
Moments later, the vibrations echoed back, smashing more glass and crockery around us. These vibrations reverberated from one end of the ship to the other for over a full minute. Nurse Ada Garland, Voluntary Aid Detachment.
I had just had my bath and was now
0.5
shaving
degrees
in my
starboard
cabin,
list.
which was about 10 yards distant from the point of contact. I was thrown very forcibly across the cabin, with sundry articles of gear on top of me. The boat lifted twice, and everything seemed to dance. And the fumes from the explosion temporarily blinded me. 5th Officer Gordon Fielding.
Ship is starting to go down.
Some were killed by the explosion itself. In the steward's quarters, the bunks fell down on top of the men, and everything collapsed, while I believe the emergency staircase was blown away. The water ran in great volumes to the forward compartments. The fumes in the alleyways were something stifling. Not sulfurous, but something poisonous and unearthly. Assistant Chief Engineer, Joseph Wolfe.
Hurry downstairs. See any flooding?
My first impression was that we had hit a mine and we would probably be safe. I gave orders to clear the lifeboats and have them made ready to be sent away should it necessitate. Captain Charles Bartlett, HMHS Britannic, 21st of November, 1960.
2 minutes
Captain
post
Charles
impact.
Bartlett came onto the bridge still wearing his pajamas. His first orders were to sound the emergency quarters alarm and to close the watertight doors.
Emergency quarters alarm. One degree starboard list now.
He wasn't aware at that point that the forward doors were jammed in the open position. He ordered the engines to stop, and the lifeboats to be swung out and readied for lowering. At the same time, he gave the order to the wireless telegraph operators to send out an SOS call for distress.
I ordered the sending out of the SOS signal by wireless, but we were not receiving any replies whatsoever. We were for a while under the impression that the apparatus was down altogether, but they continued sending the messages out, regardless of response.
What the wireless operator didn't know is that the explosion had caused Britannic's hull to flex a bit, whipping the foremast and breaking some of the connections between the wireless aerial strung between the masts and the transmitter in the ship's silent room. What this meant was that Britannic could still send out an SOS message, but she could not receive any replies.
I was on the bridge waiting for orders. My heart was in my mouth, but when I saw the captain standing there, cool and quiet, I thought to myself, it's all right. I felt a deal more comfortable. And I went to the locker and got out the captain's megaphone according to orders, and I stood alongside the captain on the bridge to see if he had any orders for me. The ship seemed to be leaning a bit to the starboard side, and she still seemed to be going ahead a little. Second Fremantle Scout Troop Patrol Leader, James Vickers.
I permitted my staff to return to their cabins, so long as it was done with haste. We're all too familiar with the dangers of ships sinking.
Lusitania in
Lusitania was only a year
1915.
ago, and the
Titanic in
3 years ago.
1912.
Nurse matron of the HMHS Britannic, Miss Elizabeth Ann Dowes.
As we were walking out of the saloon, the
5
signal
minutes
went and blast rang out
post-collision.
from the siren. Not until then would I believe that there was any danger. I distinctly remember as we quietly walked down the beautiful marble staircase and along the long corridor, where the sun streamed in the portholes, lighting up all our lovely cabins. This was goodbye to everything. Our ship was sinking. How fast? We didn't know. Nurse Ada Garland, Voluntary Aid Detachment.
It's already starting to settle by the head. It's about 2 degrees by the head and about 3 degrees to starboard. And the double hull is flooding.
As the situation continues to deteriorate, the captain realizes that his ship is in serious trouble. The Greek island of Kea looms only a couple of miles in the distance.
Over there.
Captain Bartlett orders a turn toward it in an effort to beach the ship. If Britannic can be beached, a dangerous evacuation could be avoided and the ship could possibly be salvaged.
Oh, here comes the water. It's coming in fast. It's on the F-deck level of the grand staircase. Means this ship is sinking. So the engines are running
immediately
again.
began to uncover and swing out the boats. Britannic's 55 lifeboats were arranged on the deck and numbered much differently than on Titanic. On the forward starboard side were boats 1A through 1C, consisting of large 34-foot rowboats.
Oh, they're getting the lifeboats ready.
Amidships in single
That's a
acting
precaution.
12 30-foot boats, as well as 12 collapsible boats similar to those found in Titanic. These were numbered 2 through 13 and 2A through 13A, respectively.
Oh, they got a boat already
The
ready.
middle set of gantry davits held 12 more 34-foot boats, numbered 14A through 14F, and 15A through 15F. The aft-braced gantry davits held 10 34-foot boats and 2 34-foot Thornycraft motorised boats. These were numbered 16A through 16F.
We're going to experience every lifeboat launch. The first boat launch will look like. They got the boat swung out, ready for lowering, activating the gantries.
Where originally 2 more gantry davits were designed to be installed, here Wayland davits held 2 30-foot boats and 2 collapsibles numbered 18, 18A, 19, and 19A. At the end of the sinking, of the 55 boats on board, only 35 boats would be launched.
The first boat to leave the Britannic left at around 8:20 a.m. A group of frightened firemen swung the boat out and climbed aboard themselves, lowering the boat with only a handful on board, despite its capacity of around 65. However, Assistant Commander to the Britannic, Captain Dyke, ordered the boat to rescue people as they jumped overboard, so these seats were not entirely wasted.
Okay, we're in the water.
Immediately, I swung out 2 boats, which were promptly rushed by the stewards, followed by my working crew of about a dozen sailors. As this was only a sudden panic, I was able to persuade them to get back to their positions. I must say that my sailors were wonderful after this first panic, and not one offered to leave the ship before receiving his orders. 5th Officer Gordon Field.
You take a swim.
After a certain interval, the steering gear having apparently failed, I turned the ship to head for land under her own steam. I tried compensating for our jammed rudder by running the engines on one side of the ship harder than the other.
The ship begins to lose control as the helmsman reports steering failure. For one reason or another, the steering gear no longer responds. The captain tries to use the propellers to steer the ship, using higher power on the port side that would turn the ship slowly to starboard, towards Kia.
She's sinking all right.
I snatched up my coat, rack and life belt and commenced along the long corridor to the woods to see if help was needed with patients. It was a terrible sight. Men who could barely walk struggling to climb the stairs. The screams and shouts could be heard all over the ship as the badly injured were being moved. We all helped until the very last minute when we heard the cry.
Already lowering lifeboats from the ship
Hurry
without
up,
the
my dear
captain's
children.
orders.
Nurse Ada Garland.
I broke off from the group and entered my cabin. I indulged in a few bites as I pocketed my possessions. A ring my friend had given me, and my clock, of course. This clock was
Back
the
to
most
Edek.
precious gift a friend had given me. Then there was my prayer book and my toothbrush. The latter
Oh,
was because I
Edek
complained
is
about
flooding.
not being able to acquire a toothbrush while on board the Carpathia after the sinking of the Titanic. I was now experienced with surviving shipwrecks. One might even call me an expert. I was advising people that they should wear their coats over their life jackets, and not the other way around. Should they find themselves in the water, they will need to drop off their coats, which becomes harder when the lifebelt is over it. Despite my frequent advice, I found myself having accidentally done the opposite.
She's already at the same condition Titanic was at 1 hour the Titanic hit the berg.
Most of us put on our
And its
clothes and all
Britannic
took
is
our
sinking
life
very
jackets and
fast.
started for the
boat deck. When partway up the emergency exit, an officer hailed us with, "You better hurry up, ladies." Then we knew there was more cause to hurry than we thought, and as soon as we got on top, we realised that something dreadful had happened.
Gotta tell the captain the bad news. Damages in the port bow while the coal bunkers were taking on water fast. Our nearest landfall is Kia. If we can make a run for it, we'll try to beach her there. It's more than 7 miles. Can we make
Panic
it?
was beginning to spread among the people idling on the decks. Fresh in their minds were the sinkings of Titanic and Lusitania. Within only the first few minutes of the explosion, the ship took on a noticeable slant downward toward the bow and a list to starboard. This only increased the panic. Instead of waiting for orders, a handful of lifeboats were launched without authorization from the overseeing officer. Some of the boats cleared the sinking ship, but not all.
I have a feeling we might go down the ship if we run out of time. Starting to lower 2 of the boats on the port side. We've been lowering lifeboats for a bit. And the ship moving, it's making it more dangerous.
The ship had taken on a heavy list to starboard. Then she began to
About 5
dip heavily
degrees.
forward. The RAMC were paraded on deck, and I am proud to say that anyone would have taken it for an ordinary, everyday parade. Everyone was as calm and as collected as it was possible to be. I never thought for a moment that she would go down as sharp as she did. Corporal Jack Waugh, Royal Army Medical Corps.
There's a commotion going on the port side. It's from the boats that are being lowered.
The first ship to receive Britannic's distress calls was the destroyer HMS Scourge. The Naval Auxiliary HMS Heroic also received Britannic's distress call. They responded to it, saying that they were steaming to the rescue, but Britannic's wireless operator never received the message.
Tilting. Very precariously. They're starting to lower the boats.
And as we were being lowered, we were almost thrown out of the boat catching the side. However, we eventually reached the water. The propellers were now on water level, and several of the boats were drawn into the whirlpool. The boat I was in, the pulleys taken directly off,
Oh God.
was drawn right into
Edek
the
is starting to
propellers.
flood.
And then came the decisive moment of my life. I could not
Looks like
swim,
it's gone.
yet as I looked and saw men being cut up by those terrible blades, I made a quick decision. My chum could swim, so he dived over the side. I looked after him. We were now almost to the blades, so I jumped into the sea as well.
I just think something bad's going on outside the ship.
The blades were beating the boats down, and the wreckage was keeping me under, and I could not rise, try as I would. How long this went on, I don't know, but to me it was terribly long. And I had ceased to struggle, never expecting to come out alive, as I was almost gone. I remember my thoughts then were these. This is the end. What a death. I saw my dear wife and dear little children as plainly as if they were standing before me. Then, as if by magic, I caught a breath of fresh air. Corporal Jack Waugh, Royal Army Medical Corps.
That didn't sound good. A groan.
My name is Henry Pip. I'm a 15-year-old Sea Scout. There wasn't any excitement, as everyone knew their boat stations and went to them without stopping to look for their kits. The Sea Scouts on the lifts worked them for as long as they could, but the ship soon listed so much to starboard that they had to give up and go up to the boats.
Just flooding and
I
alarming
lowered
rate.
2 of them down to about 6 feet above the waterline. In spite of the curses of the men in the boats, I kept them there until definite orders from the bridge to launch the boats. 5th Officer Gordon Fielding.
"20 minutes
We
after
didn't have much
impact."
success getting away from the ship's side. The Britannic was still pushing forward under her own steam.
Time to get up on deck.
Suddenly, all the
Tilting.
men began leaping into the sea. No shouts, just splashes as they leapt for it. Within moments, I found myself to be the only occupant of these lifeboats. But it didn't take me long to find
God.
out the reason.
It's definitely going down now.
Britannic's huge propellers were churning and mincing up everything near them. Men, boats, and everything were just one ghastly whirl. I turned to leap into the sea, but I hesitated. I forced myself into the water, but was unable to swim.
Oh! There goes a second lifeboat.
Then hit on the head repeatedly by something solid.
The propellers are chopping up the
Either a
boat.
piece of boat or the propeller itself. It hit me 3 times on the head. Terrible blows that made my brain rattle. But fortunately, it hit me where my hair was thickest. An arm grabbed me and pulled me to the surface. It gripped me and moved as mine did. I grabbed it back as I surfaced, but to my horror found it was merely a severed arm and part of a torso. As the great white liner steamed away from me, I saw to my horror a severed head to my left, floating, despite having been cracked open like a sheep's head severed by a butcher. Wreckage of every sort was everywhere as the ship slowly plowed into the distance.
The men in my boats, still hanging in the falls 6 feet above
We
the
need
water,
to stop the
witnessed
engine.
this disaster.
I gotta
And
tell the
I must
captain.
say that they ceased cursing at me about not being released at this point.
I saw the boat with its poor, pathetic crew get dragged into the churning propellers. I suppose I was taken to the core, but I could not show this. If I dared to
Sinking
reveal fear,
faster and
it would
faster.
spread like a bushfire on the veldt. I sat there, emotionless. For what emotion could I have expressed if not fear or sorrow? Nurse matron Miss Elizabeth Ann Dowse.
Water began flooding the forward holds rapidly, and water was reported in the numbers 5 and 6 boiler rooms. So I stopped the engines and ordered all boats possible to be sent away, or to stand by close to the ship.
Saving a third boat from being shredded.
2 lifeboats were smashed to splinters by the propeller blades, but the blades stopped briefly just before a third boat came into their death grip. 3 men stayed in the boat and pushed against the blades to move the boat away. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Stuart Anderson, Royal Army Medical Corps.
These miraculously stopped the engines. Now it's time to get the boats lowered away. Everyone on the boats! Quick now! Everyone onto the boats! We don't have much time. She's going down. Life jackets on. Enter the boats. Women and children first. Lower it away! Lower it away!
Having climbed into our lifeboat, we were lowered away, only to discover halfway down that the plug wasn't in the bottom of our boat. There we were, suspended in mid-air, whilst that important item was found. Down we were lowered again. It took some time before we managed to get away from the tremendous structure of the boat.
I know that women can be brave, but I never dreamed they could rise to such heights of cool, unflinching courage as those nurses did. When under Miss Dowse, the matron, they lined up on deck like so many soldiers, and unconcernedly and calmly waited their turn to enter the boats. We men are proud of them, and we can only hope England will hear of their courage. They were magnificent.
The timers stay ticky. We're at 7.5 degrees starboard list now. Head trim of 3.5 to 4 degrees. We're getting closer to 4 degrees head trim. The stern is rising out of the water. At 30 minutes till she's gone to the bottom of the ocean. The crew's swinging out lifeboats, lowering them away. I'm gonna check on the deck. Scotland Road's still pretty dry. But the starboard side of E-deck is flooding at an alarming rate. "29 minutes to go before she's gone. Forever." Uh-oh. One of the gantries just broke down.
Britannic glided to a stop, with the propellers lifting up out of the water as the bow sank deeper into the sea. The forward port lifeboat davit, a standard Welland davit, became inoperable due to an increasing starboard list. 3 boats are launched in quick succession from the aft port gantry davit, which could accommodate more of a list than the standard Welling davits.
Listing. Lifeboats are being sent off. Rated dangerous launch boats on the port side because of the lift. Inside of the sinking ship is very terrifying. Oh, it's starting to reach the grand staircase.
With the forward lifeboat gantries out of commission, I moved aft and successfully launched another fully loaded boat. I then hooked on the 5-ton motor launch when the first officer came up saying he had orders from the captain to leave in this boat and to take charge and pick up any survivors from the smashed boats. As the officer had nearly been drowned in the wreck of the Arabic, he was somewhat excited and urgent.
The second alarm was sounded and Captain Bartlett told me to go and get into my boat. I walked along the boat deck to my boat and the first officer told me to get into the motor launch, which was soon being lowered. I got in, and in doing so, my foot got jammed between the side of the ship and the motor launch.
I filled the motor launch with 30 Royal Army Medical Corps and 2 or 3 sailors and launched it under the charge of the first officer.
My boat was lowered to the water. 4 oars and 4 men to each oar. We pulled for our lives to clear the suction. While pulling away, something hit me on my left eye. But did not take much notice at the time. Blood began running down my face. After we got clear of the danger of the ship, we started to rescue our comrades that was in the water. We had no one to man our boats, so we carried on ourselves. We had pulled one out of the water and given him treatment. We saw another that was nearly dead, so we pulled towards him. On reaching him, we tried to pull him into our boat, but we failed as our boat had so many people in it. It overturned, and we were in distress. Private Samuel Edwin Williams, Royal Army Medical Corps.
They're evacuating the ship. Another boat being lowered away.
Because of the heat of a buttoned-up steamship in the Mediterranean, even in November, the medical staff, against all operating procedures in the war zone, opened the forward portholes to allow ventilation, to get some fresh air to circulate throughout the ship before the wounded were brought on board. But this meant as the water reached the portholes of E-deck, those portholes now gave the water multiple entries into the hull. The flooding of the ship now intensifies.
Grand staircase is flooding. Look how slanted the ship is. Head trim, starboard list. Head trim, starboard list. The ship flooding. Another creak, another groan. The ship begins to slowly disappear. lounge is blocked off. The listing appears to be worsening. Now about 8 degrees, I think. The gantry's gonna reach 20 degrees. Third class promenade. "8:46 a.m. "8:47 a.m. 20 minutes till she's gone. I'm gonna check a D-deck. Water's still sloshing around the starboard side of the E-deck. We had cross-flooding valves in the ship. We would have kept her on an even keel a bit longer. But look, she's starting to flood rapidly. She could capsize. It's very intense. Ship is going down very, very, very fast.
I rounded up another boat with 75 men, mostly RAMCs. As the Britannic was now very badly listing to starboard and we were on the high side, we had much difficulty in getting this boat away. She nearly capsized a few times before she cleared the ship. It was now impossible to launch any more boats from the port side.
Even the gantry davits. Or starboard list is 9 degrees.
Gave me hope that she had stabilized herself.
They started the engines.
Lowering the boats as we again attempted to work the ship towards land.
They started the engines at 8:50 a.m. Maybe we could make it to shore.
At this point, I had about 6 sailors and 30 RAMCs who were sat in the next boat calmly waiting for me to put them into the water. They didn't realize it was now impossible. Well, with this crowd, I went to Britannic's midship island, and we threw overboard to starboard. all the collapsible rafts, and deck chairs, and anything else that we could find. This was the first time I had thought I might actually have a chance of saving my own life. A little bit of hope that I felt. I can't explain it.
When the starboard list reached 10 degrees, launching of port boats from even the gantry davits was no longer possible. Crews on that side gave up trying to lower boats and began throwing deck chairs and life rafts into the water below. And despite the growing list,
She's moving.
It seemed to the crew on board that the rate at which Britannic was sinking had slowed. So Captain Bartlett ordered the lifeboat launcher to be paused, and the engine started again in an attempt to reach Kea Island.
Mars trying to reach D-deck. 15 minutes till she's gone. Sound of the Welland davits being cranked out. Well, this is my boat. When that boat touches the water, I'm getting into that boat. And the ship moving's gonna be pretty hard. It's water starting to pour onto the forward well deck. All the lifeboats have gone and were able to be launched. We have plenty of boats still on board the ship. One of the gantries is out of commission and able to be used. Sailing a ship that's filling up with water and sinking faster and faster by the minute is really dangerous. 10.5 degrees starboard list by this time.
I saw the sixth officer struggling to get his boat into the water at one of the lower points on the ship. I got some rather nasty rope burn as we tried maneuvering this boat by the ropes.
Gone to the boat.
We almost lifted this boat over the side. I put in all my remaining men with the sixth officer and kept 2 or 3 with me to manage the control breaks during the launching. Once the boat was in the water, the 2 men and I slithered ourselves down the rope and into the lifeboat.
The last lifeboat launching the tank is starting to go down to the water, and the ship's settling lower and lower by the head. Only 10 minutes left till she's gone. She's starting to capsize. The only thing I made to the lifeboat as they were loading it. Whoa. They probably need to stop the engines because the flooding's reaching D-deck on the inside. The propellers are rising higher into the air. Eight minutes till she's gone. Oh God. I currently have a 12 degree starboard list, which is very, very severe. And I made the safety of a lifeboat.
The forward motion of the ship only dug the bow deeper underwater. Water was
9
reported to be
a.m.
flooding the vessel at a record rate, so the captain ordered Britannic to stop for one final time.
Oh, I think it's the beginning of the final plunge. The final plunge.
I gave the order for all to leave the ship, passing
Lower away, lower away. You gotta get away from her. She's dropping.
Abandoned ship! Abandoned ship!
Dardo 1, abandoned ship whistle blown.
She seemed just like a pitiful, dumb animal tortured, her sirens blasting for help up to the very last.
Captain C.A. Bartlett, the commander of the Britannic, stayed on the bridge giving order to the officers through his speaking megaphone as the ship was going down under his feet. He not leave until the water lapped over him.
The ship was sinking very quickly then, going ahead and distant to starboard, and soon the water came to the bridge. Assistant Commander Dyke having reported to me that it would left the ship, I told him to leave, and shortly after I followed. We barely left the bridge, walking into the water by the about getting from the starboard side. The funnels fell just below the span.
One of the quartermasters had gone below early in the sinking to find supplies of bread from the ship's pantries to stock the lifeboats. He came out onto the deck to find the bridge submerged and the ship rapidly dropping in the water. He dropped the bread and leapt into the sea with mere seconds to spare before the vessel had disappeared.
It's just
When
sinking
we reached the deck,
fast.
the foremost of the four funnels was touching the water, and the bows were completely submerged. We jumped 80 feet into the sea from the second-class quarters on sea deck, and after swimming clear, we watched the awesome sight of the mighty liner sinking. Assistant Chief Engineer, Joseph Wolf.
Oh, there goes the forward funnel. There goes the second funnel.
It was indeed sad to watch our ship, slowly but surely sinking. We could hear her boilers rumbling off like thunder into the water, and her immense funnels, through which one could have driven a coach and four, were ripped up with as little difficulty as tearing a piece of paper.
See the other boats that way. Britannic is rising high into the air. There goes the third funnel. Whoa, she's rising high. Her final death throes. Goes the last of the funnels. And she's starting to go vertical along the campsite.
as she sank in only 480 feet of water. And the ship sank almost vertical. It was 890 feet long. She touched the bottom.
Just hit bottom. Now she's gonna settle. She's dropping. She's going.
I skippered her, and I watched her founder. To have been able to witness a vessel her whole life, from birth to death, is surely a unique circumstance. Captain Charles Bartlett, HMHS Britannic, 21st of November, 1916.
She's gone. 55 minutes from mine impact to slipping below the surface.
His Majesty's Hospital ship Britannic sank in 55 minutes. 3 times the time it took for the Lusitania to sink, but only a third of the time it took for the Titanic to go down. Out of 1,066 souls on board, there were only 30 casualties in the sinking, far fewer than most other shipwrecks of this size. 21 were members of the crew, and 9 were members of the Royal Army Medical Corps. Britannic remains the largest passenger shipwreck on the ocean floor.
She was gone. Never to be seen again. Corporal Jack Wall, Nurse Ada Garland, Fifth Officer Gordon Fielding, Assistant Engineer Joseph Wolf, Captain Charles Bartlett, Spummels, Matron Elizabeth Dowse, Steward Philo Jessup, Nurse Winifred Grinfield, Henry Pope, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Stewart Anderson, and PVT Samuel Williams are among the survivors of this tragedy. May the 30 victims rest in peace. May the 30 victims of the HMHS Britannic disaster rest in peace.